Does it really make a difference when you share on LinkedIn? Britta Blanski shares how both your career and your employer can benefit from authentically sharing online.
Hey there, I'm Krista Vance, entrepreneur and operations leader.
And I'm Matt Vance, award-winning author and social innovation researcher. We're your hosts of the Culture Profit Podcast.
Your place for purposeful company culture strategy.
Learn from HR pros, executives, and thought leaders how to prioritize profits by prioritizing people.
This episode is sponsored by Mobrium, the best friend of forward-thinking HR leaders, helping you strengthen your employer reputation as a reflection of your real culture.
Learn more at mobrium.com.
Welcome, everyone. Today's episode is the intersection between employer branding and personal branding. We're going to explore the benefits of empowering your team to represent your brand when posting online. So joining us today is the expert on the topic, Britta Blanski. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's something I'm passionate about talking about. So let's dive in.
We are really excited to have you, and this episode is going to be amazing. We are so excited for our listeners to hear it. So just so you know who we're talking about today, Britta believes the personal is professional and that everyone should have the opportunity to share their unique career experience online. Weaving together more than 10 years of experience communicating and sharing intercultural experiences, storytelling, and education, she helps leaders define their voice and confidently share it online in order to reflect their employer brand, personal brand, and connect with the right people. Working with individuals and teams, Britta provides workshops and coaching so anyone can lead by example to share a truly authentic and employee-centric employer brand. This is incredibly unique expertise. It really is. And I'm so excited to dive into it. Tell us a little bit about where you're calling in from and a little bit about yourself, personal side.
Yeah, thank you.
Personal is professional, right? There we go.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm a pretty open book. So I'm calling in from Bologna, Italy. I moved here permanently back in 2012 to marry my Italian husband. So that kind of sums it up in a nutshell. And for a very long time, I've always found myself in situations where I'm present and I understand, I know what's going on, but I'm not quite inside. I don't have that insider's perspective. I'm observing, which has given me this huge advantage to really look in and be able to pick up on small nuances of how people respond, key words or themes that are coming up in conversation and in discourse. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of taken that and shared it with others and expressed it in a variety of different ways. One being my own personal blog in the very beginning of what's it like to live abroad as an American in Italy, having two boys, going through all the cultural changes that come with being a mom in a different country, and my mother-in-law giving me advice from the Italian perspective, to then teaching in a school. So I taught for almost 10 years, and I taught geography in English to Italian students, and they came in, some were practically bilingual, and some barely even spoke a word of English. So it was like, how do I take this curriculum and simplify it so that the native speaker and the person who doesn't understand anything can all understand, because I would teach in English. So that was a real challenge and a test. And it was also a fun way to see how can you take something that seems so obvious and make it approachable and interesting to people who are all across the board. So despite the challenges, it was also really rewarding. And now that has transpired into the workplace. So you have these people who might not feel like they're a part of the culture. They feel like they don't belong. Maybe they're showing up to work every day. So it's like, how can you see what's happening, find your story, how you're connected to what's going on in the bigger picture? And how can you take these ideas that you come in contact with every single day and then be able to share them with others so they also understand when they maybe have no idea what you're absolutely doing.
So you speak Italian now. Did you speak Italian at the time that you were teaching as well?
I did, yeah. So my experience goes actually back to... Yes, yeah. No, I came here for the first time when I was 16 as a study abroad student. and was thrown into the Italian high school without speaking a single word. But then I came out 6 months later, almost bilingual. Not really. I made a lot of grammar mistakes, but it was a full immersion experience. And that's really the best way to learn any language. So then I went and majored in French and Italian at university, and then moved here already speaking the language. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Very impressive.
And so cool to have that. That's the perspective you're coming from when you entered this employer branding space. So, and such a good way to think. Like, a lot of people feel that way. They feel like maybe they don't know the language of the new company that they're in, or even if they've been there for some time, and trying to help them learn that and then promote that online. I think it's such a huge thing for companies, and they don't realize this. I really don't think a lot of companies realize this, that they have employees who have this potential to share what their brand is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, maybe even if you might be amazing at what you do, and you might be an expert, and you can show up and you're super confident with your coworkers and maybe with your manager, your boss, right? Like you're winging it. Like you hustle every single day. You might be even working overtime, and like you're just like, you're scaling, right? Like you are going up the ranks. But yet when it comes to sharing online, or like sharing something on LinkedIn, everything just crumbles. And all of a sudden you're like, there's that little voice in your head that's like, I can't share that. No one cares. People are watching. They're going to have an opinion. It's going to ruin my professional reputation. So you kind of like, you realize, okay, I'm building something that's incredible, but I don't know how to articulate that, or I don't know how to share that. And there's all this imposter syndrome and fear that creeps up when I have an opportunity to really highlight my career and my professional experience. So even being somewhere and feeling confident, but not understanding how can you share that with others to then create other opportunities, and not just, I mean, because it's not always about you, right? It's about the culture, the people around you, what you're learning, what they're learning, how you're like working together to create something that's pretty cool. And so sometimes, again, we feel like as soon as we're going to share, it's all about me. And it's like, no, it's not just about you, right? It's about your employer and your coworkers and the culture around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of self-discovery that has to happen too. I mean, you may know who you are, but then suddenly when it comes to posting online, it's like, okay, well, who am I in this frame of mind? Like, do I just, do I need to just spit out myself exactly as how I am? Sorry, whacked him in the face. Or do I need to have my own brand, and that's what I stick to online? And maybe you can share a little bit about that. And also, what are some of, the things that would make us want to overcome those fears that make us hesitant to post?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. And I have a heart for the person who thinks that their voice doesn't matter, or they're really like, I have nothing to share. And it's like, no, actually you do have something to share. Like it, because like you said, we really don't take the time to allow ourselves to reflect on the work that we're doing. And it's something that, like, unless you're told to do it, or like they're like, no, really go take like 20 minutes and just sit and like do a brain dump on this project or on this win that you just had, because we're busy and we're like, it doesn't matter. You just keep going to the next thing, to the next thing. So it is like, there's so much value in allowing yourself the time to reflect on your work experience, document what you're doing. And like when it comes to career, oftentimes they're like, okay, create like a wins folder and just go in and say when, add it in. So when you have to update your resume, you have a list of your wins and it's easy to share. But we're going beyond that. It's like, what was the process? What were the struggles? Were there disappointments? And like, were you discouraged? And how did you overcome that? And who did you speak to? And who was a mentor to you? And what was gained from that experience that now you can use when you walk into the next project? Because of course you're going to be more prepared because you've already done it, right? Mm-hmm. So we haven't really been taught to reflect and think that way. And we usually just kind of oversee it and don't think it's important. So one, I would tell someone, if they want to start sharing, or if they want to publish on LinkedIn or even on their own website, or kind of build like a virtual portfolio, like take the time to dig in and really just kind of write and see what comes out. And getting started is the hardest part, but then once you do start, it'll become easier. It's one of those things that sounds so cliche, but it's true. And like, no one can tell you to like, you can say like, get started. But you can, it's always worthwhile to speak with someone and pay attention to the questions that they ask you. So if you're like, I don't know where to start, what should I share? Like, just ask your coworker. Be like, hey, what did you think of that last event or that last meeting? And just kind of see the dialogue that comes up and the questions that come up. And then if you can answer those questions, that's something of value that you can provide. And knowing like statistically, people are 3 times more likely to trust an employee over the CEO or like the company page branded content. And that gives you a lot of power. And I think some employers are almost afraid of that, which is why they're like, we don't know what you're going to say, so don't say anything, because they know the influence that you have. So if you're afraid to start and you think that it's, no one wants to hear what you have to say, I want to encourage you to take the time, because in that reflective process of preparing to write, you gain new insight and perspective on your own work journey. You'll be able to share it better with anyone the next time that comes up, whether it's a networking event or you want to get hired internally or you go and interview for another job and you're pivoting. So documenting is going to build that confidence that will allow you to share it better and with ease and with confidence. And then you are influencing someone. Whatever you share, it will get seen, which is usually the contrary effect of like, oh no, I don't want to be seen. Like, no, like, no, let me just kind of hide behind my job title and like this reshare post from the company page. And it's like, no, people like literally the data shows like they're 3 times more likely to trust you over branded content. And so like your voice does matter, and someone will see it, and it might be just what they need to know if they want to take the next step, or if they're gently like, okay, this isn't for me, and that's okay.
Yeah. And honestly, I love where you're going with this as far as trying to help people see that their voice matters and that sharing online is good for them in the end. And that's something that I've had conversations with people on, especially those who have been laid off. There have been lots of layoffs the last few years since COVID. And really, you're in the captain's seat. Like, it's your life, it's your career. You are the brand manager of your career and of your reputation and your public image, whether you care or not, whether you believe it or not. There is an online representation of you as a professional, and you can own that, or you can just kind of let it be. But there's a lot of value to be harvested, both from learning from others participating online, but also sharing, like you said, and that self-discovery. And I can definitely testify to that as far as, things that I've shared have been moments of reflection to kind of gather your thoughts. And in writing my book, The Review Cycle, that was one of the biggest expediters of growth I ever had, as far as taking time to write out all these different things that I was learning and developing and testing and experimenting with. And it helped refine the knowledge and expertise that I had. And I think everyone can get a measure of that, even just by posting on LinkedIn. And that's way less of a commitment than, a thesis or a master's degree, or it's just bite-sized career growth that you have the opportunity to gain by sharing what's going on in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, people are afraid of course, like they're afraid of other people's opinions, and they're afraid of how they're going to come off across. But I think ultimately, it's never, just as like a preface, it's never in replacement of the actual people around you, right? So obviously, like if you go into the office, the people that you talk with in person, like those relationships are so important. You don't ever want to use this as a replacement. But by sharing online and giving those little tidbits, I like to call them breadcrumbing. It's like when you breadcrumb information about who you are, and you build a personal brand, and you highlight your career and you highlight your wins, people get a sense of who you really are. And oftentimes we're afraid that they're going to know who we truly are, when it's like, I think oftentimes we often show up to work with a mask and a total facade, because we're trying to please, essentially we're just trying to please man, right? Like we're trying to please our boss. We're trying to get the next promotion. We want people around us to be happy with who we are. And so we hide a lot of who we truly are. But when you share online, and especially like, and you said someone got laid off, I think a lot of times people, when they do get laid off, all of a sudden LinkedIn is like, the doors are thrown wide open. They're like, oh, now I can share, right? Because like they're not watching me. And it's like, but if you had been sharing, how many conversation, starters would you have left right there as like a breadcrumb, especially like in your personal life, which is why I say the personal is professional. When you go to a networking event, you don't show up and say, hey, here's my offer. This is what I do. Buy from me. You're probably like, hey, who's going to win the Super Bowl? Right. Or like, tell me, do you have family? Do you have kids or your dog or your pet? Like you talk about everything else except work first. So if you share that, people get a sense of who you are up front. And then if you do go in an interview and they're kind of looking at your profile and they go through this, you'll immediately know if it's a culture fit or not. And the faster you can make that decision, it's helpful for the organization that's hiring, and it's extremely helpful for the employee. If they can go through and look at other employees' profiles and see what are they about, what's important to them, what are their values, they'll see, okay, do I need to walk in here and put on a mask every day and hide who I am in order to please them? Or are they going to know, like, look, this is who I am and this is what I'm bringing to the table, and like, do you accept it or not? Which can sound really harsh and scary, but there's nothing worse that just like eats away at your soul when you feel like you can't be yourself and like you feel like you're living this double life.
Yep.
So I hear a couple of the positives, like what's in it for me, because people need motivation to spend this time on this or be vulnerable online. It's scary to overcome all of those hesitancies. Maybe one reason is, preventing the grasping once they get laid off, like, what do I do now? Okay, now I'm on LinkedIn, right? It's kind of giving them a little bit of job security, maybe with that job, or maybe just being able to get another job helps with that. And then you also mentioned that they can have influence on other people. And that, I think, is something we all desire intrinsically. We want to help others. We want to be someone that they remember or that they learn something from. And so having that influence. Are there any other positives for what's in it for me? And then I want to hear more about what's in it for the company to have their employees doing that. So
yeah. So Disseminate, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They have this whole toolbox of employee advocacy resources and their own platform, which is called Disseminate, which helps pull content from an organization and help put it out. Anyway, they came out with their 2024 employee advocacy benchmark report, and in it, polling their clients and all their employees and the people they work with, 96% said that posting on social media, which in this case is referring to LinkedIn, had a positive effect on their career. So essentially, It's like you cannot post and things just stay the same, or you can start posting and you have a 96% chance that it's going to have somehow positively impact the work that you do, right? So almost like 100% say that it was beneficial. Yeah. So I would say that one, that's encouragement, but really what happens when you start sharing is you get visible, and visibility creates opportunity. So you can't expect other people to just notice you. We refer to LinkedIn being like an online networking, like an ongoing live networking event. Yeah. You go to a networking event and you go and sit in the corner, like in a chair in the dark. And then you like leave the event and are like, man, no one came and talked to me. Like that was the worst event ever. Like I was there and there were all these people.
Free lemonade, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, why didn't anyone come and say hi to me? It's like, well, yeah, because you just were in the corner in the dark sitting there the whole time. Whereas if you stand up, walk around, introduce yourself, have conversations, all of a sudden you're going to get other people's phone numbers. You're going to get referrals. People are going to recommend you. They're going to be talking about you in different rooms when you're not there. And that's the same thing on LinkedIn. So if you show up, put yourself out there, introduce yourself, have conversations, you start to build trust, and people will come to you as the resource. And there might not be this like immediate, someone's going to hire you or you're going to get promoted, but you're really building the safety net for your career, because you never know what's going to happen. And people, when they see you consistently over time and they know you and they can really call out who you are and what you do and how you serve others, they can then recommend you later on down the road, or if you need to, or maybe they need help and you can recommend them. And it just goes both ways. So really, like, apart from, yes, it's going to have a positive impact, it's going to create opportunity for you. And you might not be able to articulate it immediately, but it will be there. And it could be an internal promotion. It could be getting contacted out, to come and, be headhunted for someone else. Could be a speaking opportunity. You never know. And that's kind of the exciting part, is that you really then are in charge of your career and can make those decisions and choices.
Yeah.
And how, like, is there a frequency that you need to post to have those benefits?
Well, so like, I mean, the more it's kind of what you put in is what you put out. Yeah. But like, by no means do you ever need to post every single day. Posting something is always better than posting nothing. So I would say, like, if you are in a 9 to 5 and like you're busy and maybe you have a family and you volunteer and you have a life outside of your job, and LinkedIn's not your top priority, I would shoot for 2 times a month starting, like original, unique content that's written solely by you. And then you could add in an occasional reshare of someone, maybe a colleague and you're supporting them, or a company page repost or something like that. And then build up from there, eventually once a week. And once a week is a good cadence that shows you're active on the platform. Yeah. And you're someone that you can reach out to and expect a response from.
Yeah.
Seems very reasonable.
Yeah, that makes
doable.
Sense. So let's talk about the company side a little bit. Like, I'm sure there are people, leaders listening, that maybe they're a little fearful about some of what we're talking about. Like, oh yeah, this is great because our team members can go post and then they have more chances to leave our company. We need them here. There can be a little bit of that mindset. I'm drawing some parallels here with online reputation when it comes to reviews. Reviews are very trustworthy. Posts from employees are very trustworthy. It's a form of UGC. It's a peer-to-peer influence instead of, like you're saying, the brand or the executive leadership. It has a little bit different tone when we're sharing online, but there's tons of benefits that can come from the company and the managers encouraging employees to be active in their own career development, their own personal brand, and the company is part of that. They're kind of a tag along. So talk to us a little bit about the company benefits and how a company can support kind of a healthy ecosystem of sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what you just said is so key, is, you're asking how can it be healthy? And I think a sign of a healthy organization is if their employees are creating their own content, because that will demonstrate that they feel safe, they feel heard, that they don't feel like they're being micromanaged, and that they're creating the space for diversity, which I think is a huge one. It's if you give not necessarily free reign, and a company should always provide guidelines unless there's been no discussion. But if they're like, we want you to be active online, like we want you to help represent our culture, values, and like really demonstrate the employer brand, then please share. Usually it's like, guys, please send out a mass email from the marketing team. Hey, we're on LinkedIn now. Like, why don't you share something, right? People are like what, right? So always provide guidelines, right? But so if you provide the guidelines and then within that they have, liberal creativity to share what they want, it's a really good sign that they feel seen, heard, appreciated, recognized, and that they're allowed to express their differences, even when it might feel like it could reflect poorly. So keeping in mind, I believe this is from an internal LinkedIn stat from a couple of years back, so it's not super recent, but I think it only has increased really in the meantime. But when employees share content, it goes 571% further than company page content, which is just ridiculous. And it gets like 8 times the shares compared to company content. So even just like on a straight up like investment side, and even recently now, they came out, authored up, and Richard, I forgot his name, it's slipping my mind right now, came out with their study from last year too, looking at the algorithm. And it was just shown that individual content fills 36% of your feed. Company page content fills like 3%. And then sponsored posts fills about 30%, so it's still paid. And then straight up ads are, I'm going to get it wrong now. I think it's like 20%, something like that. So the point is that you can either spend money, like literally spend your dollars for content that's going to like appear fractional, like just a fraction less of what your employees could share. So you can like literally save money, equip your team to write content, and it's going to get shared 8 times more. It's going to go 500% more reach, and it's going to fill other people's feeds more than like any marketing campaign that you're going to run through your marketing team on the company page and your ad spend. So just like looking at like dollar wise and like, okay, what do you want to go further? You could save that. But then also it's creating this opportunity for people to really highlight the diversity within the company, provide core behaviors that demonstrate you're not just words on a wall or words on a website, but they're actually like walking the talk. And people are comfortable to share and talk about what's happening within the organization. So it's a real opportunity for the company to mirror and reflect who they say they are in the most tangible, authentic way. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And I think this is an initiative that a lot of companies could put in place. And like you said, great investment, cost saver. One thing we've talked about in a lot of our podcast episodes is how companies, they want to attract the right talent. And the only way to do that is if people see what your company actually is like, not what you want them to think it's like or something, but actually what it is like. Because what we need is our expectations to be met, to be satisfied. And so if you get your employee that you're excited to hire them on and everything, and then they are like, this isn't what I expected this company to be, then you have a lot of turnover. And this is huge. I think this is great for preventing that, for securing the right fit, the people who are going to align with the values of the company. So, so as far as a leader trying to create this as an initiative, what are some final recommendations that you can give for them to get this started, and like what tools they can provide their employees for getting started as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, I say just get started, which I know is not super helpful, but like we had said before, that's the hardest part. And as a leader, you have a really critical role because people are looking to you as the example. And so if you're willing to share first and you're willing to show them what it can look like to share, then they're more likely to enter in. It has to be, it doesn't have to be, but it's way easier if it's a top down approach than a bottom up. Because people just, like I said, like when you share, you're going to get seen and they're being watched. So I would first say, as a leader, take the initiative to share first. I would say let your team know that you are sharing and say, hey, like I'm on this journey, I'm going to see what it's like. If you see it, just can you support my content? Because it means a lot to me. And then reciprocate that. So if you see an employee sharing, verbally let them know and recognize that you saw it and something that you liked about it. Because it's one of those, one compliment is going to give you the motivation to continue and keep sharing and write more. Whereas if you give one negative, like put down or like, why did you share that? Or I can't believe you shared that. Or, maybe you shouldn't.
Insecurity. Like,
that's it, right? Like there's no more, like your opportunity is lost. So let people know what you're doing, invite them in to participate with you and follow along and encourage them in to engage, not just for a matter of like, expanding your reach, but because it's more than that. It's right about building the relationship, creating the opportunity to have the conversation about what you're sharing on. And then I would, in an ideal world, I say like equip them. I say equip and empower, which means train them. So like come in and have someone show them very simple, basic copywriting tools. Like this is how you can write a post. This is an example of a story. Here's how we can let's take this project. We're going to have a conversation and then we're going to each go and write a post on it together. So they have like in time, real action experience of what it can look like to write. So they don't just feel like they're left to their own devices to try to figure out, is this good? Is it bad? Does this help my personal brand? Does it not help my personal brand? So provide that training for them and give them resources, whether it's prompts or templates, or like having someone come in and actually do it live and work with them.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you pair those resources like with the guidelines that you were saying, like an easy one that comes to mind is don't share anything that's like confidential. I think, just a few very basic do's and don'ts. All of a sudden, like Krista mentioned, managing expectations, it can help employees see clearly what's encouraged and what's, maybe against the company handbook, for example. And there's tons of room to be creative within a very simple framework. And I love that you mentioned like leadership team sharing and setting the example and creating that social norm. I think those are very powerful tips. As we kind of wrap up here, do you have any other resources that you'd like or you'd recommend people check out as they're continuing to explore this topic?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a few of my own resources. I don't know if I'm allowed to share them.
Yes, definitely.
We'll link to all your stuff
Okay.
in the highlight
Yeah,
article
we'd love
for everyone
that.
listening. So
Okay,
tell us more about it.
Connect with Britta online, and we'll share her LinkedIn as well. So and go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. No, I didn't want to like step over any like.
Yeah, no, you're
there.
totally good. Let's hear it.
Yeah. No, I do have like 50 easy like content ideas like for employees. So if they're looking to talk about their work experience and their journey within the organization, they can download that. It's for free. There's 50 different ideas. If you did that, like if you did one a week, you'd have content for a year. So I'm not saying that you have to do that, but like you're definitely set, or you could go through it and choose what you want. So that's one thing. I would also I would follow. So if you want to share on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is really like different pools of people. It's kind of like if you go to the hot springs, and if you've never been to like natural hot springs, right? It's not just like one big giant pool, but there's like these little crevices that form. That's exactly what LinkedIn is. And you can create those pools intentionally if you take the time to curate it. So if you're wanting to get started, apart from having, some prompt ideas to get, that you could follow to start writing, I would start looking for the people that you're genuinely interested in. I've had multiple people tell me they've learned more on LinkedIn than they have at university. Now, I don't know where they went to school, but it's to say that like people are sharing really high value and quality content. Yeah. So if you take the time to be like, hey, I'm interested in this, and this person's a content creator, they share regularly, I'm going to follow them. So I would find a couple people that you're like, this is great. I love this. I'm learning. I see them as a resource. I can reach out to them. Like they respond to me. Like we're building trust. Like I feel like I get to know them. And I would see how they write, because you can learn a lot by watching what other people are doing. And then I would say you want to emulate that. So obviously you don't copy it. You don't just copy and paste what they're doing. But just become mindful and start paying attention, and pay attention to the topics of what they're talking about, and use it for inspiration for yourself. So again, you don't have to just because they shared about this, funeral in the family, that doesn't mean that I have to write about a funeral. No, you decide the level of vulnerability that you are comfortable with, but you can get a sense to see how do they talk about it? What are they talking about? Is that something that I can give my perspective on as well? So that'd be my first thing. You can either download these 50 ideas, use them as prompts to get started, and then start following people and just start paying attention and using it, become like an active learner.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I'm going to add one more here. A good friend of mine, Trevor Nilsson, is one of the co-founders of a company called Clio. It's KLEO, and it's a free Chrome extension to discover and create LinkedIn content. And you can look at there's lots of things that you can discover there to give you some great ideas and see stuff that's working great on the platform. And so that's another one that's free that I'd recommend checking out.
Yeah, and Clio, I know that. and if I'm not mistaken, they also help with some of the formatting. Is that correct? So when you're writing, if you want
I
like
believe
bold
so.
text and things like that. Yeah.
That's so cool that you've heard of them. And
Yeah,
you're in
no, I
IT.
have the extension. I
You
just
do? Oh,
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Clio is a great one. Authored Up is another great one that also provides
Okay, yeah.
hooks. I just my one warning is templates can be dangerous because it can kind of put you into a box that you don't want to be in. And I
Mhm.
think especially right now, people need to hear that it's okay if you don't follow the LinkedIn format template, which is
Okay.
obviously like the strong hook, like strong statement, bullet point, XYZ, reversal of the strong statement, ABC, right? And then like a call to action. That's like the basic template for every LinkedIn post. And once you know that, you see it everywhere. And then
Yep.
the more you become accustomed to
It's
something,
still less genuine, right?
well, it feels less genuine. And then like your brain tells yourself that you've already seen it. And so it like
Interesting.
you skip over it. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, like you're kind of like your mind is like, saw that, and you just scroll. So like, yes, like there's a format, but you can go outside of that. And actually maybe by breaking the template and breaking the standard format, you'll get more recognized and like stand out because they'll say like, oh, that's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask just one more question here?
Yes.
So I've been struggling with this. This is a personal question for LinkedIn, and maybe some other people can relate, but I keep getting prompts to verify my profile, and they say people with verified profiles get double the views, double the, profile views and exposure on their posts and stuff. That wasn't a thing, years ago. And the way I read that is we're throttling everyone's content that's not verified, but they're putting the positive spin on it. You could have more exposure, right? So pros and cons to that. Any thoughts on verifying your profile?
Yeah. So I'll just say straight up, I can't verify my profile. I think it's because I have like an Italian IP address and it's like asking for my Italian passport, which has my middle name on it. And so it's saying my name doesn't match the passport name. Anyway, I've tried to verify it and I can't. So I don't know, like from my own experience, if it's affecting the content. People say, I'll say this, they've said the same thing for premium. Like if you have premium, then you're going to get more views and more reach. And so you're like, you pay to play and you'll get, better quality connections. I can attest that that's not true. I've paid for it. I haven't paid for it. No difference whatsoever. They said the same thing with creator mode. When creator mode rolled out, they said, if you have creator mode, your content's going to go further. Again, that was demystified. It's not true. And I personally put out a poll a while back, frustrated that I couldn't get verified because again, I keep getting this notification that's like, you're sending too many connection requests. Like if you're verified, more people will accept, right? I'm like, you're just trying to get me to verify my account, right?
Yeah.
So I put out a poll and I asked the audience, my network, if someone is verified, like, does it come? I don't remember the exact wording, what it was, but the sense was like, do you think they're more trustworthy or does it impact your choice in accepting them? And they said no. And most people actually are not verified. So I would say if you're not able to get verified or if you don't want to do it, you're not missing out. It's not suppressing your content. It's not making a difference in who's accepting your connection requests. The biggest differentiator in your LinkedIn success is the activity that you're doing on the account. So whether you're messaging people and if you're commenting and creating content.
Okay, that's great. Super helpful.
Yeah, you have so many amazing tips. Hopefully people who are listening, hopefully you're writing notes because there's some great things I'm going to get started and do better with my LinkedIn. And everyone follow Britta. She's a fantastic example and you can get some ideas from the content that she puts out. And we'll post all of those links to our highlight article. And please give us a review as well. We'd love to genuinely hear what you think about the podcast and tune in next time. Thank you, Britta.
Yep.
Thank you.
Britta.
Thanks for tuning in to the Culture Profit podcast and for being a part of our journey to prove that putting people first is best for business.
Today's episode was sponsored by Mowbray.
Want to get more employee reviews and streamline your employer reputation? Visit mowbray.com.
Now go find one way to prioritize your people and watch your profits grow.